Ify stared at the girl across the market stall, her heart pounding. The girl's face was identical to hers, with the same deep brown eyes. She clutched her basket, her mind spinning. She had no sisters, her mother always said. So who was this girl? Ify and her family were simple people, living in a small, close-knit village where superstitions ran deep. Twins, in their community, were seen as a mixed blessing. Some said they were gifts from the gods, a sign of prosperity. Others whispered that they were a curse, a bad omen. Ify's father, Ikena, was a proud man who believed in upholding the old ways and feared any disruption to his family's good fortune. When Ify and her twin sister were born, Ikena made a decision that would shape all of their lives. He convinced Ify's mother, Chika, that they could not keep both daughters. "One must go," he said with a heavy heart. "It's for the best. Our family will be blessed only if we do this." So, Chika reluctantly wrapped one of the tiny girls in a shawl and carried her to her sister's home in another village. That twin would grow up believing she was just another child, unaware she had a sister, a mirror image, just a few miles away. The years passed quietly. Ify grew up as an only child, believing the world around her was as simple as her parents made it seem. She was close with her mother, who often looked sad and distant, but she always believed it was just because of the hardships of village life. Her father was strict, distant. She knew he cared, but she always felt there was something missing. One afternoon, in the bustling village market, that all changed. Ify's heart raced as she watched the girl, who was now looking back with the same shocked expression. They stared at each other for what felt like an eternity before the girl turned and hurried off into the crowd. Ify's instincts took over, and she ran after her. "Wait," she called, weaving between the stalls and pushing past shoppers. "Please, stop." The girl finally halted, turning to face her. Up close, the resemblance was even more uncanny. It was like looking into a mirror. "Who are you?" Ify asked, her voice trembling. The girl swallowed, equally stunned. "My name is Chiamaka. I live in Okwu village with my aunt." Ify's mind spun. Okwu was only a few miles away. She had cousins there but had never heard of a girl her age who looked just like her. It didn't make sense. Do you have any siblings?" Chiamaka asked hesitantly. Ify shook her head. "No, I'm an only child. At least, that's what I've always been told." The silence that followed was thick, both girls grappling with the impossible realization settling between them. Finally, Chiamaka's face softened. "I don't think that's true," she said quietly. That evening, Ify didn't tell her parents what she'd discovered. Instead, she lay awake in bed, her thoughts racing. Why would her parents keep something like this from her? Why would they separate her from a sister she didn't even know existed? But the next morning, Ify couldn't keep the secret any longer. She found her mother preparing breakfast, her expression weary as usual, and blurted it out. "Mama, I met someone in the market yesterday. A girl who looks exactly like me." Her mother's hands froze, her face paling as she turned to Ify. What did you say?" Ify held her mother's gaze, a newfound determination rising in her chest. "She said her name is Chiamaka, and she lives with your sister in Okwu." Chika's shoulders slumped, her eyes filling with tears. Ify had never seen her mother look so broken. "Please, Mama," Ify said, her voice softer now. "Tell me the truth." With a deep, shuddering sigh, Chika began her story. Many years ago, when Ify and Chiamaka were born, Chika had been overjoyed, cradling her two tiny daughters. But her joy was short-lived. Ikena, her husband, had seen their birth differently. "It's a curse," he had said, his voice full of fear and conviction. In their village, twins were still seen as bad omens by some, especially the older generation who held tightly to the old beliefs. And Ikena, though he loved his family, was deeply influenced by those superstitions. Ikena had insisted that one of the twins had to go. "Only then will we have peace and prosperity," he'd said, as though speaking some ancient wisdom. Chika had pleaded, wept, and argued, but in the end, she'd given in to keep their family together. I sent Chiamaka to my sister, Chidera, in Okwu, Chika whispered, her eyes wet with tears. I thought it would be better if neither of you knew about the other. I thought, maybe it was for the best. Ife was quiet, the weight of the revelation pressing down on her. She didn't know whether to feel betrayed or heartbroken. But why, Mama? She finally asked. Why did you let Papa make that decision? Why didn't you fight for us? Chika looked down, her face etched with regret. I was afraid, Ife. Your father was convinced. He believed he was doing the right thing, even though I know it sounds cruel. And I didn't want to break our family. Ife swallowed hard. The pieces of her life were rearranging, forming a picture she barely recognized. But one thing was clear, she needed to meet her sister. Really meet her. A few days later, Ife set off for Okwu, her heart heavy with a mix of excitement, fear, and anger. She didn't tell her father where she was going, she was too hurt and confused to face him. But she couldn't wait any longer. She had to see Chiamaka again, to try to make sense of everything. When Ife arrived at her aunt's house, Chidera greeted her warmly, surprised to see her alone. Ife, this is unexpected. What brings you here? Ife hesitated, not sure how much her aunt knew. I came to see Chiamaka. At that, Chidera's face softened, a hint of sadness flickering in her eyes. She nodded, gesturing for Ife to follow her inside. Chiamaka appeared a few moments later, looking as nervous as Ife felt. The two girls sat across from each other in silence, neither knowing where to begin. Finally, Chiamaka spoke. So, it's true, she whispered, her voice trembling. You're my sister. Ife nodded, feeling a strange warmth and sorrow at the same time. Mama told me everything. How they sent you here, how you didn't know about me. I don't understand why they would do this. Chiamaka shook her head. My aunt told me a little about it. She said our father was afraid, that he thought having twins would bring some kind of misfortune. I always thought that was just a story people told to explain things they didn't understand. The two sat in silence, letting the weight of their shared story sink in. 4 years, they had been living so close but so far apart, separated by nothing but fear and superstition. How did you grow up? Ife finally asked, wanting to know everything she'd missed. Chiamaka gave a sad smile. Aunt Chidera has been good to me. I went to school, I have friends, and I help her at the market. But I always felt something was missing. I guess it was you. Ife reached out, taking her sister's hand. And I always wondered why Mama seemed so sad. Now I know. I think she never really got over losing you. The two girls talked for hours, sharing memories, dreams, and all the things sisters should have known about each other from the beginning. But eventually, reality crept back in, and they knew there was a decision to make. When Ife returned home, she was ready to confront her father. She found him sitting outside, staring off into the distance as he often did. She took a deep breath, her heart pounding, and approached him. Papa, I know about Chiamaka, she said, her voice steady. Ikena looked at her, his face a mixture of shock and shame. He opened his mouth to speak, but she didn't give him the chance. How could you do that to us? To me? To Mama? You kept a sister from me, my own twin. You lied to all of us because of some superstition that doesn't make any sense. Ikena's shoulders slumped, and for the first time in her life, Ife saw a tear slide down his cheek. I thought I was protecting our family, he whispered. I was afraid, Ife. I was afraid that if we kept both of you, something terrible would happen. I know it was wrong. I see that now. Ife shook her head, struggling to hold back her own tears. You hurt us all, Papa. And you hurt Chiamaka most of all. She's lived her whole life wondering why she didn't belong, and it's because you chose to send her away. Ikena sat in silence, unable to meet her gaze. Ife took a deep breath, the anger beginning to soften into something more painful. She wanted to forgive him, but she also wanted him to understand the cost of his decision. "You have to make this right," she said finally. "For Chiamaka, for Mama, and for me." A week later, Ikenna visited Chidera's house for the first time since the day he left his baby daughter in her arms. He carried a bundle of gifts, traditional offerings meant to express regret and seek forgiveness, but he knew they could not make up for what he'd done. Chiamaka was waiting outside with Chidera, her face a mix of curiosity and resentment. Ikenna approached slowly, his gaze lowered, his voice quiet. "Chiamaka," he began, struggling to find the words. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I know what I did was wrong. I let fear control me, and because of that, I lost the chance to know you. I made you suffer, and for that, I am truly sorry." Chiamaka's face softened, her eyes filling with tears. She didn't say anything at first, but she nodded, letting her father's words sink in. For so long, she had wondered why she wasn't wanted, why her family had abandoned her. Now, she had an answer, and while it didn't erase the pain, it gave her a sense of closure. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for finally telling me the truth." Ikenna nodded, the weight of his guilt finally easing just a little. He turned to Chidera, bowing his head in gratitude. "Thank you for raising her, for giving her the love that I was too foolish to give." Chidera placed a hand on his shoulder, her own eyes wet with tears. "I did what was needed, Ikenna. But it's time for you to be her father, too." From that day on, Ikenna made every effort to rebuild his relationship with Chiamaka and to repair his broken family. The road was not easy, and forgiveness did not come quickly. But slowly, he won back the trust of his daughters and his wife. And in time, Ife and Chiamaka began to feel like true sisters, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. They shared laughter, tears, and stories of their childhoods, bridging the gap of years they had lost. In the end, the family learned that love was stronger than superstition, that the bonds of family could be mended, even if they were once torn apart. And though the scars of the past would always remain, they became a reminder of the courage it took to confront fear, to face the truth, and to find forgiveness in each other.